for 10 days in a row, 14 eggs a day.
Why?
That might be the switch for you. Okay, let's lower your fat intake, heal the liver, and pull fat from that liver. You don't have a weight problem, it's a weight symptom. The real problem is hormones and that's exactly what we're going to dive into today.
Ben Azadi,
New York Times best-selling author.
He's helped millions reverse visceral fat and lose belly fat in days.
and it starts with eating more fat.
Think about your heart, your liver, your pancreas. These are essential organs, and the visceral fat is the fat that gets wrapped around these organs, and then it starts to apply pressure. And over time, as this builds up, that pressure leads to a lot of first symptoms, weight gain, maybe some fatigue. But if you don't take care of it now, it progresses to serious diseases like type 2 diabetes, serious conditions like heart disease, and even cancer. Carbohydrates are not essential for fat loss. As a matter of fact, for 93% of Americans, according to the studies, it's blocking them from fat loss. I was obese for most of my life. I had a metabolism that was interfered with. I thought my body was broken. When you do it the right way, the way we're going to talk about today, the weight will stay off forever.
Ooh, super exciting. Okay, sprinting.
Short bursts of running and sprinting is incredible for burning visceral fat, healing hormones, and feeling damn good. Here's the reason why.
And that's going to burn belly fat? If you're trying to lose weight, especially belly fat, and you've tried everything, but nothing is working, chances are you're dealing with visceral fat. Now, visceral fat is a dangerous fat that wraps around your organs. It messes up with your hormones, drives inflammation, and makes it close to impossible to burn belly fat. And the scariest part is, your doctor most likely won't even test for visceral fat. But my guest today, Ben Azadi, is changing everything. Ben is a New York Times bestselling author, and he'll share a very simple 10-step approach to help you burn visceral fat in a matter of days. It's all free, and it takes less than 5 minutes a day. And he'll also share a very interesting egg fast that you can do to shed the last 10 pounds in less than 10 days. So Ben, my first question. If somebody is just wanting to lose belly fat, they've tried everything and nothing is working, why should they first care about visceral fat?
Well, visceral fat, it's important to understand because that is the inflammatory fat, this white fat that's packed around your organs, these really important organs that you want to be thriving, not suffocating from the visceral fat. So think about your heart, think about your liver, your pancreas. These are essential organs, and the visceral fat is the fat that gets wrapped around these organs, and then it starts to apply pressure. And over time, as this builds up, that pressure leads to a lot of first symptoms like weight gain, maybe some fatigue, maybe some digestive issues. But if you don't take care of it now, it progresses to serious diseases like type 2 diabetes, of course, insulin resistance, which is the precursor to type 2 diabetes. And it dramatically increases your risk of serious issues and conditions like heart disease and even cancer. So this is the fat that the body stores around the organs. And it could show up in your belly fat and love handles, but it's really inside of you. This is a different type of fat than what's called subcutaneous fat. That is the fat around like your arms and your body, which is not inflammatory. That's a healthy fat. And what's really interesting, Rena, about visceral fat is that somebody could appear to look skinny, maybe even lean, but actually have a lot of dangerous visceral fat. They're called TOFIs, thin on the outside, fat on the inside. So it's important to understand that visceral fat is inflammatory, and then we want to be able to reduce that visceral fat, and you can reduce it. First, I'll talk about what has caused visceral fat to accumulate. Then I'll discuss, all right, what are the most efficient, easy ways to pull fat from the organs and reduce the visceral fat, which not only will help you look better, but you'll feel so much better as well. Okay, so what is causing the visceral fat? I'm going to say stress as the number one cause here. And when we think about stress, of course, we think about like mental stress, work, relationships. That's one factor there. But even things like over-exercising is a stress. Chronic cardio is a stress. A lot of marathon runners and long distance runners, you think they're healthy, they actually over time develop a lot of visceral fat because it's too much stress for the body. We're not really designed to run long distance and jog for hours on end. We're designed for short burst of running, like sprinting, which I'll talk a little bit more about how that actually helps. So chronic stress is a really important one. And if you're tracking something like heart rate variability, it's looking at your nervous system, it's looking at stress. And we could talk a little bit more about that. But we want to reduce stress. Getting quality sleep helps to reduce stress. Not doing chronic cardio helps to reduce stress. And when you're working out, recovering from the workout helps to reduce stress. So stress is number one. Number two, it's actually going to be, sorry to be the bearer of bad news here, but alcohol. And I say alcohol because here in the United States, it's really popular to drink alcohol. And it's really important to understand that alcohol is a toxin to your body. Even the most expensive, and I'm going to put this in quotation marks, cleanest alcohol in the world is a toxin. It kills brain cells. It kind of distracts your liver from burning fat, pulling fat from the liver, pulling the visceral fat, and it focuses on getting rid of the toxin, the alcohol. So every sip is actually, you're accumulating more visceral fat over time. And I'll tell you, the worst offenders when it comes to alcohol and visceral fat is going to be beer and wine. And the reason why I say beer and wine is because beer is very estrogenic. And estrogen is a hormone that is very important in men and women, but not when it's elevated. When it's elevated, that actually signals visceral fat storage and belly fat to accumulate. And for men, it signals man boobs. For women, it signals estrogen dominance. And beer is loaded with estrogen. It lowers testosterone, which is a very important fat-burning hormone that burns visceral fat. It depletes that, which makes you accumulate visceral fat. And the reason why I say wine is because in the US, at least, most wine is loaded with pesticides, herbicides, glyphosate. This is inflammatory to your cells, which also leads to the accumulation of visceral fat. When I interviewed Dr. Zach Bush on my podcast many years ago, he's a triple board medical doctor. He shared research showing that the average California wine has about 64 herbicides and pesticides in it. So we're drinking this cocktail of toxins, which leads to visceral fat. If you choose to drink alcohol, which I don't drink alcohol or recommend it, but I always get the question, all right, if you did drink alcohol, what's the best option? It's going to be the clear alcohols without any mixer. So think about whiskey, tequila, and vodka. Those are going to be clear alcohols that you want to have on the rocks and limit it as much as possible. But the best option is to avoid alcohol altogether. All right. The third cause of visceral fat is going to be glucose and insulin spikes. When we think about the hormone insulin, insulin is a really important hormone in the body. There's no such thing as a bad hormone. Insulin is an energy sensor. When it's chronically elevated, it's kind of like a bully hormone, Rena. The fat-burning hormones that pull visceral fat from your organs, they go into hiding. And when insulin is around, it's signaling fat storage, especially the visceral fat that we're talking about here. So when we think about the three macronutrients that people eat, we have carbohydrates, protein, and fat. It is by far the carbohydrates that will raise blood insulin levels more than protein and fat, especially processed carbohydrates and ultra processed carbohydrates. Every time you eat a processed carb, you are signaling a huge insulin response and teaching your metabolism to start storing visceral inflammatory fat. So we want to reduce ultra processed carbs. If you're going to have carbs, you want to have whole food carbohydrates. But in general, if your goal is if you know you have visceral fat and you want to pull visceral fat out of your body and burn that visceral fat, you want to drop your total carbohydrates under 50 grams total per day, coming from low glycemic, non-starchy carbohydrates like green leafy vegetables. And if you go do carnivore, which we'll talk about as one of the solutions, you'll get even better results, which is essentially zero carbohydrates. So we want to replace the carbohydrates with protein and fat. Protein has a very moderate response when it comes to insulin. It's considered a medium response. And fat, which we've demonized over the years, saturated fat and cholesterol, has barely any response when it comes to insulin. So by replacing carbs with fat and protein, you're going to lower insulin. And what's going to happen is as you lower insulin, you lower your blood sugar levels, which is important. Then you signal to your metabolism, okay, we don't have glucose floating around in the bloodstream, or a lot of glucose floating around in the bloodstream. What is a different energy source that we can use? Oh, we have body fat, visceral fat, organ fat. Let's make the switch and start pulling that fat from the liver, from the heart, from the kidneys, from the pancreas, and you start using that for fuel. The body produces ketones. So that's going to be an important swap there. And then one more contributor towards visceral fat is actually going to be high fructose corn syrup. A lot of people consume not just high fructose corn syrup, but high fructose in general, which means fruit, by the way. But high fructose corn syrup is found in a lot of products in the US. Almost all processed foods contain them. And what's interesting about fructose is that 90% of fructose is metabolized by the liver. Why is that important? Well, when you overwhelm that liver, if you already have a fatty liver, which is visceral fat of the liver, and a lot of people do, millions of people, and you're consuming a lot of high fructose corn syrup or even fruit juices or fruit in general, too much fruit in general, you're overloading that liver, and it has to process the fructose, and it starts accumulating more of this fat around this liver. And the liver, I call the MVP organ, the most valuable player. It's a detoxification organ. It's a fat loss organ. It's a longevity organ, helps you produce energy. We want a healthy liver. So we want to look at the ingredient list on the foods we're eating, make sure it doesn't say high fructose corn syrup or anything related to fructose. And if you're having fruit, it's better to have the whole fruit instead of juicing it. But if you eliminate fructose altogether, what's going to happen is your body and your metabolism is going to start pulling fat from the liver, and then you start reducing visceral fat. So those are the major causes that contribute towards this nasty white fat around our organs.
Brilliant. It's important to understand where it comes from so that we can do things about it. And we're going to talk about a 10-step protocol. It's easy. It's free. People can do it at home to fix their visceral fat. So as you mentioned, stress, carbs, alcohol, high fructose corn syrup. So that are things that can cause the visceral fat, the belly fat, that is hanging around your organs. And it's very, very dangerous. I want to ask about you, Ben, because you are an expert in metabolic health. You've helped, I think on your YouTube channel, you've got about 60 million views. And you've helped so many people reverse chronic health conditions, fix their visceral fat and belly fat. How many people have you helped in that arena?
So thank you. I've had in my programs over 10,000 people from all walks of life, not just the United States, not just men, not just women, but both men and women and different age ranges. So they come into our programs that we've launched many years ago. And it's cool to see that data, because it's one thing to look at the research, which is great. You know, we want to look at research and make sure we're aligned with that. But then when you apply it, like, what do you see? So 10,000 plus people over the last 17 plus years I've been in this space. I've been able to get some data of all walks of life, and it's been really interesting to see that data.
Is there anyone that stands out in terms of the biggest success story, somebody that's lost a lot of weight or belly fat doing your protocol?
First person that came to mind is a guy named John Miller, who doesn't mind me mentioning his name. So I put a protocol out on my YouTube channel about a 30-day plan to burn visceral fat, lose weight, and it was pretty much based off of the 30-day plan in my book Metabolic Freedom. And it's funny because and you know this, being a YouTuber like me, the title was follow this plan to lose 20 pounds in 30 days, some sort of bold claim, which was a pretty good title to get people to watch. And of course, I saw comments like, oh, clickbait, no way you could lose 20 pounds in 30 days. So this guy, John Miller, followed the protocol. And the only reason I know this is because he friended me on Facebook, and then he started to go live every single day. Day 1 of Ben Azadi's protocol, day 7 of Ben, and every day he was going live, just kind of sharing what he's doing. And John Miller completed the 30 days. And no, he didn't lose 20 pounds in 30 days, like I said. He actually lost 44.4 pounds in 30 days, following exactly what we're going to share here today. His blood pressure dropped, his blood sugars dropped. He pulled visceral fat. He completely looks entirely different than what he did just 30 days prior. And he kept it going and continued to lose weight. And it's just a testament, because he was an older gentleman. It's a testament to how incredible the human body is. It really is. Your body's not broken. It's being interfered with. There's inflammation. There's dysbiosis. And as long as you identify the interference, which we're talking about today, we already outlined a few of them for the visceral fat, and then you work on removing the interference, which we'll get to as well, then the body goes to heal itself. And the thing about losing weight is that weight loss is a side effect of getting healthy. In other words, we don't lose weight to get healthy. We get healthy to lose weight. You don't have a weight problem. It's a weight symptom. The real problem is hormones and inflammation, and that's exactly what we're going to dive into today.
And you also had your own experience that you were overweight and you lost weight by following the principles that we're going to talk about. And also that's outlined in your book, Metabolic Freedom. Can you discuss that?
I think my authority doesn't come from the 17 years of research in the books and the accolades that are great. I think my authority comes from my pain to purpose. I'm somebody who was overweight, not just overweight, that's actually putting it lightly. I was obese for most of my life. I had a metabolism that was interfered with. I thought my body was broken. For 20 plus years, I was obese physically, I was obese mentally. I, like so many people, I was looking for answers, and the answers I kept finding was just eat less and move more. It's all about caloric restriction, and kind of makes sense. But when you apply it long term, it doesn't work. It's like asking Warren Buffett, the richest man on the world, one of the richest men in the world, how do you get rich, Warren? And he says, just spend less than you earn. Okay. Thank you. Doesn't really give me the solution, so it doesn't make sense. Same thing with just telling people to eat less and move more. So that was the feedback I got. Even my doctor, back when I was in my early 20s, I had high blood pressure. I was overweight. Actually, I was obese. I had erectile dysfunction, high blood sugar levels creeping into prediabetes. And my doctor would never ask me the question, hey, what are you eating, Ben? Let's discuss your lifestyle, Ben. No, the question was, what can I prescribe for this 23-year-old man? And that's the problem. That looking at the symptom, treating the symptom is the problem. So I thought I was too young to go on medication, so I declined. Then I did what I am teaching today. I focused on hormones and inflammation, worked on stress, movement, the things we're going to discuss today, some of the strategies that I apply. And I lost 80 pounds in 9 months. I went from 250 pounds at my highest weight to 170 pounds in 9 months. My body fat percentage was as high as 34%, and I got it as low as 6% at my lowest. And I completely transformed my physical and mental health. And that was 17 years ago. And the cool thing about doing it the way that I teach is that you keep the weight off. It's not just a fad diet or a quick fix where you lose some rapid weight and gain it back. No, I'm living proof that when you do it the right way, the way we're going to talk about today, the weight will stay off forever and you'll feel good, you'll look great, and it doesn't matter if you're a male or a female or how old you are.
Now, as Ben mentions, there is no quick fix to burn visceral fat and to lose weight. You have to take the right steps, but once you do that, you'll see how easily it is to burn belly fat. And we're just about to talk about the 10 steps right now, but the first step is to lower the carbohydrates. Lower them to under 50 grams of carbs, but some people need to even go to zero carb. Now, with a zero carb diet or a carnivore diet, I have seen so many success stories. People have lost hundreds of pounds, including visceral fat and belly fat, and also reversing chronic health conditions. Things like heart failure, diabetes, Hashimoto's, thyroid issues, all while eating fatty meat and more butter and not counting calories. And I experienced this myself when I went carnivore 5 years ago. And what I found kept myself and my community on track was medical support through carnivore doctors. You see, I had the same questions as you. What about cholesterol? What about protein and fat? And all these other questions that you find that when you go on a carnivore diet. And that's why I created a private online community called Go Carnivore. It is a safe place completely off social media where you can ask all of your questions to our carnivore doctors every single week. One of the best things about our community are our monthly challenges. We have our dairy-free challenges and our high-fat challenges, and this is where our members get the best results. So if you want to try carnivore with medical support, just head to gocarnivore.com and get 10% off your first month. Oh, super exciting. Okay, let's talk about these 10 steps to burn belly fat. I think people really want that. They want to lose the weight, but they want to keep it off and not keep doing these different diets and different things. So if they follow this, but if they follow everything, because even you say that don't just do one thing, do everything in combination, and that's what's going to help. So if it's okay, let's go step by step. And I have a list here so that people can write notes. There's also going to be notes on the screen as well. So first step, carbs. Okay, do we need carbs for fat loss and to lower insulin?
It's interesting because if you ask that question to a dietitian or nutritionist or like fitness expert, they're going to say, yes, carbs are the number one energy source for the body. You need to eat it, eat enough, eat them around workouts. And that's an old school way of thinking. When we look at the medical textbooks, we see essential fatty acids, which are essential fats, meaning these are fats we must eat and consume because our body does not produce it. So they're essential. we see essential proteins, which are essential amino acids, which we must consume through our diet as well. But there's not anything in any of the medical textbooks that say essential carbohydrates, meaning we don't need to eat carbohydrates to thrive, to stay alive, because the metabolism can manufacture its own carbohydrates, its own glucose through protein, through fat, through your adrenal glands. So carbohydrates are not essential for fat loss. As a matter of fact, for 93% of Americans, according to the studies, it's blocking them from fat loss. Constant glucose and insulin spikes. We went through the blood insulin response from carbohydrates. It's very high. Protein, moderate. Fat, very minimal. So carbohydrates are actually blocking you from burning fat. They're signaling fat storage. And the people that eat carbohydrates are also eating throughout the day. They're snacking, they're grazing, which is an issue. So the goal for almost every single person here is to start off by replacing your carbohydrates with proteins and fats and eliminating the snacking as the first step towards fat loss, especially removing the visceral fat.
That was by step 1 and 2. So lower the carbohydrates and then eat more fats and carbs. And then the second step was no snacking. So don't snack in between your meals. But I do want to talk about the worst foods that people should avoid if they want to fix their visceral fat and their belly fat. And this is in subcategories, as you've outlined previously. So the first one is wheat and grains. Why should nobody ever have that? And that includes bread, pasta, rice, millet, quinoa. Not good for fat loss.
Yeah, these are healthy superfoods, right? And just to add a little bit more context to the snacking part, because I wasn't sure if we're going to go deeper into it. I'm glad that was number 2, because snacking is not boosting your metabolism. Snacking is destroying your metabolism. It's signaling to your body, store fat, store fat. And the average American eats 17 to 23 times a day. That is an actual study from Dr. Don Clem, my colleague. It's the grazing. It's even if it's healthy snacks, like some of the foods you mentioned here, healthy snacks, it's signaling fat storage. So we don't want to snack. It's not helping your metabolism. It's doing the complete opposite. It's teaching you to be a sugar burner, not a fat burner. So those foods that you just mentioned, the quinoa, the whole grains, the cereals, the oatmeal, I would throw into that category. All of that is turning into sugar in your body. A lot of people think, I don't eat sugar, Ben. I have this, I see this all the time. I don't eat sugar. I have my rice, my brown rice. I have my wheat bread. I have my quinoa. I have my oatmeal. I eat healthy carbs. That is sugar. That turns into sugar in your body. It might not happen as fast as a donut or candy, but it happens over time. And when you keep consuming these foods, you're signaling to your body, raise glucose, raise insulin, store fat. And then you're a chronic sugar burner. You cannot burn fat and sugar at the same time. You are primarily going to burn sugar or primarily going to burn fat. And these carbohydrates, even these healthy carbohydrates, will raise glucose and teach you to burn sugar. And the longer you do that, the more insulin is produced. And we just established when insulin is up chronically, fat storage, not fat burning. That's an important, very simple lesson is just understand high insulin, fat storage. Low insulin, fat burning. So these carbohydrates, even these healthy ones you just mentioned, all signal high insulin levels.
So that includes, so as you mentioned, the oatmeal, but also keto bread, because they do have wheat flour in keto bread. So anything that is ketofied or anything that, is low carb or carnivore, even carnivore stuff, like you should be careful. Next one is all fruit and fruit juice.
Fruit, as I mentioned, contains fructose. Fruit juice is concentrated fructose. Your liver has to produce 90% of fructose, and most people have fatty liver already, which is fat around the liver. And when you overwhelm it, it'll just pack on more fat, which will trigger fat storage. It'll blunt your detoxification. It'll lead to energy issues and energy crashes, and also skin issues. The liver is important for so many reasons. It's the MVP organ, as I mentioned. We think fruit is healthy, but the fruit we have these days is hybridized fruit. It's not the same fruit from 50 years ago, 100 years ago. It's very sweet. A lot of it's contaminated in the US with toxins like glyphosate and other contaminants. And when we put fruit into a blender and juice it, I know here in the US, when I go to a healthy restaurant, there's always on the menu like smoothies and fruit juices because people think it's healthy. They go work out, then they go to Jamba Juice is very popular, like fruit juice place here in the US. But in general, you're going to find them at a lot of healthy stores, fruit juices. That is a concentrated dose of fructose. And if you put on a continuous glucose monitor or track your glucose with a finger prick and tested what that fruit or fruit juice is doing, you're going to see a huge spike in your glucose levels. And when you see that, know that your body is storing fat for those hours. You're not burning fat, and you're going to have a steep drop in those glucose levels, and then you're going to have an energy crash. And what is your brain going to want? More fruit, more sugar, more carbohydrates. And now you're on this blood sugar roller coaster, and it feels impossible to burn fat or have energy without carbohydrates. But there's a better option.
So for most people, fruit is not a good idea. I do see in people in the comments, they say, I have fruit, I have this food, and I'm totally fine. This is for people that want the ultimate plan to burn visceral fat and belly fat when they've tried everything. So for some people, they need to eliminate fruit. That is bananas, berries, apples, cherries, oranges, all these different things that can elevate insulin. That's the hormone that we want to reduce. Next one. Now, this is for my carnivores. Pasteurized cow dairy. Why is that not good?
Yeah, and I'm a fellow carnivore too. I'm like 90% carnivore. I love it, but pasteurized dairy. There's a study that showed 75% of the entire population in the world is lactose intolerant. That 75%. That's insane because we lose the ability. 75% of us lose the ability to process pasteurized cow dairy once we get older in life. And pasteurized cow dairy, what does that mean? That means it's milk taken from the cow that's pasteurized. It's heated to kill the bad bacteria, right? And that's because they were trying to reduce contamination. But when you get raw milk, which is not it's unpasteurized from a healthy source, it could be completely healthy. But in the carnivore and keto space, which is my space and your space, a lot of people consume a lot of pasteurized dairy in the form of milk and even cheese. And they don't know that it is going to cause them to store fat and in a lot of cases also increase inflammation. So you might want to test, what happens if I went a week or a month without pasteurized cow dairy and just had either no dairy or raw dairy, or even better, here's another option. Sheep and goat dairy is a great option, whether it's pasteurized or unpasteurized. Of course, unpasteurized is a better option, but sheep and goat dairy it's better tolerated by most people. So I would make that swap, and you should see a difference just doing that, or just eliminating pasteurized dairy altogether. You'll notice a huge difference. So, for example, like butter is something I love, and there's a little bit of some dairy in there, not too much, and most people could be fine with butter. But if you feel like you're really sensitive to dairy, then ghee would be a great option because it removes the dairy portion, it removes the lactose. And when you're going to do milk, if you're going to do milk, go with raw milk. That's whole milk, none of the skim milk, low-fat milk. That's going to be a better option for you as well.
It's crazy if you look at skim milk, the amount of sugar that's in that. I'm like, my God. And same with yogurt.
It's insane.
Yeah. Same with, like, my mom has skim milk. I'm like, Mom, what are you doing? Whole fat or just don't have it? Okay, next one. Now, this is interesting. So people think that legumes like beans and peanuts and peanut butter is healthy for you, but it's quite inflammatory, which can lead to visceral fat and belly fat.
Yeah, because they contain a lot of these anti-nutrients, the lentils, the beans, and my mom loves lentils. It's funny because my mom, when I do carnivore, which is most of the time, and I have dinner with her, which I do every Thursday, she'll make lentils and she'll say, "Is that okay on carnivore?" I'm like, "No, Mom, it's not carnivore." Legumes, peanut butter, and peanut butter I love peanut butter. It's like my trigger food. I could go through several tablespoons of peanut butter. It's not healthy though. It doesn't love my body. My body doesn't love peanut butter, I should say. They contain these anti-nutrients that block these vitamins and minerals that might be in these legumes and items, but you're not absorbing them, and it creates inflammation in the body. It leads to joint pain. It leads to headaches, fatigue, of course, waking because of the inflammation factor, and it also disrupts your gut. The gut plays a huge role in fat loss, in visceral fat, burning visceral fat, in energy production, in autoimmune. It triggers autoimmune disease. When it's compromised. And these legumes, as you mentioned, the chickpeas, the lentils, the beans, the peanut butter, they will create inflammation in the gut, in the body. So it's, for most people, it's not a good idea. Sorry to give the bad news there.
So we are going to talk about some easy swaps that people can eat, but there's a few more things that we should talk about. So vegetables, again, carnivore people will really understand this, but if you're not carnivore, maybe you think vegetables are okay. So things like potatoes, spinach, kale, tomatoes, eggplant, Not the best if you want to lower inflammation and therefore visceral fat.
It's true. When we think about why that is, because it doesn't make sense to a lot of people. What, you're telling me that vegetables could be a problem? You're telling me that my whole potato could be an issue? And for a lot of people, yeah, the answer is yes. Not everybody, but for most people, the answer is yes. You watching right now, the answer is probably yes. Here's why. These plants, they need to survive just like humans need to survive. The number one priority for every human and animal and plant is survival, right? We want to survive. So when we think about humans, we have the ability to run away from a threat. We have the ability to fight a predator through our arms and our fists. Animals have claws and teeth. They could fight or run away. They could run away as well because they have legs. What about plants? What about potatoes? What about these things that don't have arms and legs and claws and teeth? Well, they developed these plant toxins over time because when a predator ate the kale, ate the spinach, ate the potato, the predator got really sick from these plant toxins. These plant toxins are called oxalates, lectins, phytates. There's many of them, tannins. And then the predator understands, okay, every time I eat that kale, I get sick. I'm not going to eat the kale. That's how plants have survived. So enter our modern day. We're eating a ton of spinach and kale and potato and even things like goji berries, and they contain these plant toxins. And most people are already inflamed. They already have a high stress bucket. Then we start eating these foods because we think they're healthy. We've been told they're healthy, and they're actually making things worse. They're creating inflammation in the gut, which means you're not digesting food properly. It's going undigested, going into your bloodstream, triggering a hyperimmune response. Not good. And they're also chelating minerals from your body. Chelating means removing minerals from your body, which depletes energy production, meaning you feel fatigued. And when you deplete energy production, you burn less calories, which means you store more fat. That's why so many people who go carnivore or animal-based, they feel incredible. They burn a ton of fat. They have amazing energy levels because they're starting to lower inflammation, restore the gut, and they're starting to get these amazing minerals to fuel the cells in the mitochondria.
Absolutely. Next one is nuts. So this is along the same line. So almond butter, almond flour, almonds, cashews. These are all healthy foods, aren't they?
Yeah, well, we thought they were, right? Almonds are a big one, especially in the keto space, because they're in a lot of keto breads, as you mentioned earlier, the keto breads, keto pizzas, almond flour, almonds, and almonds contain high amounts of oxalates. Oxalates in particular are one of those anti-nutrients I was speaking about, but they are probably one of the worst because they're these tiny little needles, if you look in a microscope, and you can look it up, that they're sharp little crystals that poke holes in your gut microbiome. And when you consume them over time, it creates inflammation in the gut, which increases inflammation, which then blocks fat burning hormones from doing their job. And it's so easy to overdo the nuts and the seeds, the almonds, the cashews, as you mentioned, others out there, because they taste good. I mean, nobody just eats 2 or 3 almonds. They're eating a whole bunch. It's so easy to overconsume. And then when you think about putting it into a flour, like the almond flour, it's concentrated oxalates. I remember, Rena, before I knew all of this about anti-nutrients and oxalates many years ago, I was in the keto space, which I still am, and I was consuming a lot of almonds and almond flour. And I kept getting these reoccurring styes in my eye, which are really painful. They're really ugly. They last for 2 to 3 weeks. I thought it was because I was going to the gym and maybe I was like touching my eye and it was, my fingers were dirty, but it wasn't that. It was actually oxalate dumping. I was consuming a ton of almonds and almond flour, and it was my body's way of removing those oxalates through the styes. And once I started studying oxalates, this is 2018, started studying oxalates, studying anti-nutrients, and then I was removing them from my diet, going more animal-based. I never got a sty ever since. It's been many, many years since I got the sty. So your body will always show you symptoms of things that you might not associate with almonds. I mean, who's going to look at a sty and say, oh, you're eating too many almonds? But oh my gosh. And it was also causing me to be inflamed and store more belly fat and feel fatigue. So when I removed that, I started to feel incredible.
Now, as Ben mentions, even healthy foods like almonds and nuts can cause so much inflammation. So we do need to be very wary about what we put in our mouth. But at the same time, we also need to be conscious about what we put in our skin. Because in case you don't know, whatever we put in our skin penetrates into the blood and can get into the brain and our cells, causing inflammation. And when I found this out, it changed everything for me. Because as you know, as I mentioned, I have been doing a high-fat carnivore lifestyle for the past few years, and it helped me heal so many different chronic health conditions. But I didn't realize that I was still exposing my skin to toxins through the skincare that I was using. And I used to use 10 different skincare products, but now I only use one. It's 100% chemical-free tallow balm. Now, you might be thinking, why would you put a tallow balm on your skin? Well, this has helped my skin so much. It's helped my skin stay hydrated. It's improved the skin texture, as I generally have very acne-prone, sensitive skin. This has helped me so much, and that is why I created the Primal Tallow Balms as an effective chemical-free solution for your skin and also for my skin. And I'm very excited to share that with you. The Primal Tallow Balms are made from 100% grass-fed, grass-finished tallow that naturally contains vitamins A, D, E, and K2. So what does that mean for you? Well, that means that you could experience better skin hydration, better nourishment, moisturization, and hydration. And it doesn't have any preservatives, there's no nasties, it's just pure tallow. And I like the unscented balm. I use this every day. Just a small dollop lasts me 24 hours. So if you want to pick up a tallow balm, just head to shop.theprimal.com and get 10% off your next order. The last one, vegetable seed oil. So there are some nasty 7 oils that we should not be using. And you also have a seed oil card. So can you explain that?
Seed oils, processed fats. They're in 80% of the food supply in the US, and they're also all over the world. They're called vegetable oils, seed oils. Other names for them are linoleic acid, omega-6 fats. I'll give a list of all of them in a second and some healthier swaps. But the reason why they're so bad for you is because the chemical nature of them. They're called polyunsaturated fatty acids. That's the chemical term for them. So the word poly means many. These fats contain many double bonds. And the more double bonds a fat has, the more reactive the fat is, the more unstable it is when it is introduced to pressure, light, oxygen, heat. And when we look at the way they process these fats, they process it with pressure, light, oxygen, and heat. So during the processing of these vegetable oils, they already go bad. They already go rancid. So much so that they add chemical agents and detergents to mask the rancidity of the smell. Then they put it into a bottle, and then it's shipped out to your grocery store. And then we buy that bottle, and then we cook with that oil. It's already rancid. We make it even more rancid. They're at most of your restaurants. They're at even your healthy restaurants or high-end restaurants. Then we consume it. And in chapter 4 of Metabolic Freedom, I talk about this process called lipid membrane reorganization, which shows that once you consume these bad fats, within hours, they incorporate into your cells and cell membranes within hours. So we heard the old adage, you are what you eat. Well, yeah, it is true. And it happens a lot faster than you think. And you might think, okay, all right, we incorporate these bad fats. My body will get rid of them probably in a few hours as well. Okay, no, it's not a few hours. All right, in a few days, my body will get rid of these bad fats. Nope. What about weeks? Nope. Months? No. The half-life for these bad fats is 680 days. What does that mean? That means when you consume the plate of French fries or the healthy food cooked in vegetable oil, it goes into your cells within hours, and half of it is removed 2 years later, creating inflammation, blocking your fat-burning hormones. And not only that, there's a toxicologist who I referenced in Metabolic Freedom, and I want to give credit to Dr. Kate Shanahan on this one because she put me on, she made me aware of this study. Dr. Martin Grudfeld is the toxicologist, and he looked at French fries that were cooked in vegetable oil. And he looked at many different toxins, but one of the toxins he was looking at was something called aldehydes. Aldehydes are carcinogenic. They're cancer-causing. When you smoke cigarettes, your body produces aldehydes. That's how tobacco smoking leads to cancer. So he looked at 25 French fries cooked in vegetable oil, analyzed those aldehydes, and found that 25 French fries had as much aldehydes as 25 tobacco cigarettes smoked. That means one French fry, if you eat it, it's like smoking one tobacco cigarette. Yikes, that is insane. So here's the list. Should I give the audience the list, Rena?
Yeah, of course.
Of course, right? Let's not leave them hanging. The list of the bad fats, it's actually 8 of them, not 7, is going to be canola oil, called rapeseed oil in the UK, corn oil, and cottonseed oil. Then we have soybean oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil. Then we have rice bran oil and grape seed oil. Those are what Dr. Kate Shanahan calls the hateful eight. They're found in a lot of foods. So do an audit, look at the ingredients list. When you go to the restaurants, tell them you're allergic. I have, as you mentioned, my seed oil allergy card. I was just in Los Angeles this week and I was using this at all the restaurants. You could simply just tell them you're allergic to the bad fats, and they'll give you some healthier options, which are, I'll give the healthier swaps. The healthier swaps, the better swaps are going to be saturated fats and mono unsaturated fats. So remember the discussion we just had about the double bonds. Saturated fats have 0 double bonds, making them very stable, even with heat, even with pressure, even with oxygen. Monounsaturated fats have just 1 double bond. That's where the word mono comes from. So saturated fats are going to be coconut oil, butter, ghee, beef tallow, duck fat, and even in some cases, lard, if you find it from a healthy pig source. Monounsaturated fats are going to be olive oil and avocado oil. Just make sure it's 100% avocado oil, 100% olive oil, because sometimes they cut them with seed oil. So in general, if you're going to cook with food, animal fats and the coconut oil, the saturated fats are better options. And then the salad dressings and dips, the better options would be the avocado oil and the olive oil.
Perfect. I love that seed oil card because people, even in my carnivore group, they say, well, if I go out, then how can I, alert people that I'm allergic to seed oils? I can't have them, because they sneak it into food. So as you said, use the card. I'm going to link it in the show notes so that people can use that, go to your website and get it. Because it is really important to avoid all of these things. And the reason why we took the time to mention these things is because if you avoid one of them, that's fine. But as you see, there's many different aspects of food and in our environment that can cause the inflammation, causing the visceral fat and the belly fat. Let's talk about some good swaps. You mentioned that you're carnivore-ish. I'm curious, what do you eat?
Well, I do really well with red meat, whether it's like a steak or grass-fed beef. Eggs are also great. I do sheep and goat dairy, not so much the pasteurized cow dairy as we spoke about earlier. My routine these days for carnivore is Monday through Saturday, I'm 100% carnivore. Sundays, I flex out. I intentionally flex out. And it doesn't mean I have a whole bunch of processed carbs and anti-nutrients. It just means I do well with white rice on that day. I do well with some low glycemic fruit on that day. And then I lower my fat on that day. It's more of a higher carb, higher protein for a day. And then Monday, I go right back to carnivore and ketosis. It's really interesting, Rena, and I'm sure you've experienced this, and your carnivore group has experienced this too, because I was just traveling. I was just gone for a whole week. I was in Utah and then in Los Angeles. And I would go to these dinners with friends, and I would even go to like a house dinner with friends. And a lot of people they're like, you can only eat meat? Like you're only eating, they don't get it. They still don't understand it. And it's really interesting. And then I explain like how I feel, what it's done, the research behind it. And like, that makes a lot of sense. And sometimes it inspires them to do it. Sometimes they just think I'm crazy, but I love carnivore. I think it's incredible. I feel great with it. If you have an autoimmune condition, oh my gosh, it's amazing for autoimmune conditions. I've done 90 days. I've done 45 days. I've done 30 days. Now, the current groove or schedule I'm in is Monday through Saturday carnivore. Sunday, I call it a carnivore flex day. And for me, that works right now.
That's perfect. I'm a 5-year high-fat carnivore, so I tend to do higher fat than protein for many reasons, but it just suits me. But I think it is important for people to understand that not everybody has to be carnivore. Not everybody has to do this perfect diet. And it's more about progress over being perfect. That's what we do talk about to potential carnivores that want the healing from the carnivore lifestyle, but maybe they can't adhere to it 100%. 100% is perfect, but sometimes life happens and you just need those easy swaps. Let's talk about those easy swaps. So the base for the best fat burning foods, there's also low inflammatory because you want both of them. So the base is your animal-based foods, meat, eggs, fish, seafood. Can you talk more about that and better picks for that?
Yeah, so red meat, it's probably the best, whether that's like cow or lamb. Red meat, there's not one vegetable, one fruit that has as many vitamins, minerals, as anti-inflammatory as red meat. That's surprising to a lot of people. What people don't understand is like if you just looked up the nutritional content of spinach or any vegetable, you'll see, this amount of vitamin C, this amount of iron and zinc. But as I mentioned earlier, a lot of that, most of it is locked by these anti-nutrients. It doesn't mean it's absorbable. But when you look at meat, it's completely absorbable. You're getting all the vitamins, all the nutrients, especially when it's from a healthier source like grass-fed, grass-finished cows. Lamb is typically grass-fed, especially when it's from New Zealand and Australia. It's so anti-inflammatory and it tastes delicious. And you don't want to overcook the meat, by the way. The more red, as you know, the more nutrients that are preserved. So meat is a staple in my diet. And the cool thing about eating red meat, most restaurants have red meat. Go to a steakhouse. It might not be a carnivore place or a keto place, but you could find a burger without the bun. You could find a piece of steak. You could find a red meat option at most places. And it makes even at airports, if you eat at the airport, you could find it there. Seafood is great too. A small fatty fish is the key though, because the bigger the fish, the more toxins it has. So think of like tuna, swordfish, bigger fish. I tend to stay away from that because they usually contain more heavy metals like mercury and other heavy metals, because the bigger the fish, the more that it accumulates. But small fatty fish is great. The acronym that I always follow and teach is the SMASH acronym in terms of wild caught fish. And this is a great tip for your audience. So the SMASH acronym is going to be salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, and herring. Those are good 5 amazing small fatty fish. If you get them wild caught, any of them are fine. And then eggs are incredible. I think eggs are Mother Nature's multivitamin. And when we say eggs, it's the whites and the yolks. It drives me crazy, Rena, when I go to these healthy restaurants and they have these egg white omelets. It's like, no, this is not healthy. And they have spinach in there too. I'm like, oh, no, this is not what we want. So the yolk contains choline. It contains zeaxanthin, lutein. It's anti-inflammatory. It's packed with protein and fats. So you want to consume the whole egg. And we mentioned, the theme of this conversation is visceral fat. Visceral fat. I mentioned fatty liver disease. I mentioned the fat around your liver. Choline in the egg yolk is one of the most important nutrients to heal the liver and pull fat from that liver. So you want to talk about a great protocol for visceral fat, especially the liver fat. Eat more eggs, have 3 to 5 eggs every single day. And you don't want to overcook the eggs. If you overly scramble them or hard boil them, it's still, fine to consume, but you're going to lose a lot of those nutrients. So you want a soft scramble, a soft boiled, a poached egg. You want a runny yolk. That's where the nutrients come from. So yeah, those are some great options that are anti-inflammatory and taste delicious.
You say that you could do an egg fast to lose the last 10 pounds. So we'll talk about that a bit later. But I do want to mention, so the ruminant meat, so steak, lamb, eggs, fatty fish. Now, when it comes to bacon and poultry, not bad. But if you preference ruminant meats, it's better than bacon and poultry because of the lower inflammation from 4-chamber animals as opposed to monogastric animals. Moving on, fats. They mentioned saturated fats, butter, ghee, tallow, lard, duck fat. That's beautiful. Anything else that you need to say about that for people to burn fat, burn the visceral fat?
Yeah, once you understand cellular metabolism, and you don't have to take a class to do that, we could break it down real quickly. Once you understand this, you understand why saturated fats are the key to fixing your hormones, to burning fat, and to feeling good. Everybody has cells inside of their body. Obviously, we have about 37 trillion cells on average inside of the body. So think of your cell as a circle. Picture a circle here. And every cell has these little receptor sites sticking. They're actually inside of the cell, but also sticking out. They're called integral membrane proteins, but we'll call them cell receptor sites. And the role of those receptor sites, and there's tens of thousands of them on a single cell, they're kind of like cell phone antennas. What is the job of a cell phone antenna? To receive a signal to produce a job. So these receptor sites do something similar. They're receiving signals from your fat-burning hormones, as all of your hormones, but we'll talk about the fat-burning hormones. And once it connects to the receptor site, it tells your cells, burn fat, burn fat. When you have too much cellular inflammation, it blocks this from happening. We're recording here online. You're in Dubai, I'm in Miami, Florida. We're having a great conversation so far, but it would go disastrous if I muted my mic, right? I'm trying to send a message, but if I muted my mic, think of that as inflammation around the cells. I could scream at you, Rena, but you won't hear me. Audience will be frustrated. There'll be symptoms. Same thing when you have inflammation, the message of your fat-burning hormones cannot get in. You're going to be frustrated. All right, what does that have to do with saturated fat? Well, the cell membrane, which is where those receptor sites are integrated into, it's made up of saturated fat and cholesterol, the two most vital fats to lower inflammation and allow your fat-burning hormones to do its job. Yet we've been demonizing saturated fats as the boogeyman. There's a term that I reference in Metabolic Freedom called lipophobia, which is the fear of dietary fat based off of 50 plus years of propaganda and misinformation. Saturated fat is the most important fat for your body. Cholesterol is the most important fat as well for your body. It lowers cell inflammation, allows not just your hormones, by the way, but nutrients need to connect to those receptor sites. Oxygen needs to connect to those receptor sites. Many other things need to connect to those receptor sites. So the foods we mentioned, those healthy saturated fats and monounsaturated fats, are the key to lowering that cell inflammation and allowing your hormones to burn fat. It's like unmuting the mic. Now the message will be communicated.
Okay, perfect. So we have mentioned just carnivore foods, but I am mindful that maybe somebody in the audience is not 100% carnivore and they may be ketovore. I do want to open the floor to some low inflammatory foods that might be good for people to burn visceral fat and belly fat. One, for example, is avocado.
Yeah, avocado. I'm a big fan of it. So avocado technically is a fruit. Most people don't realize that. And it has a good amount of monounsaturated fats. It's not considered a traditional carnivore food, but it is definitely a keto food. And what I love about avocados, many reasons why. For me, it tastes delicious, first and foremost. And it contains monounsaturated fats, which we established are really healthy for you. And it contains something called phytosterols. Phytosterols are these nutrients that could actually help lower inflammation in many people. And it has a good amount of B vitamins, which helps with stress. That was the first thing we talked about today. With high stress triggers visceral fat. Well, these B vitamins in avocados could help support the adrenal glands and lower stress levels. Avocados, you could use them many different ways. You could put them in, pair them with your eggs, with your fatty cuts of protein. You could put them in a shake if you do that on your keto plan. You could just drizzle sea salt and olive oil on it and just have it like that. You could take it with you on the go. It's great. It's a tool that I use a lot, and I think a lot of people in the keto space should use it as well. So I'm a big fan of avocados, yes.
So it's not to say that people should have the avocados. It's just to give people more options. Also, if they want to have like macadamia nuts, if they want to have some lettuce or peeled cucumbers. I'm just trying to think of vegetables that might be good for people that's low oxalates, low phytates, low lectins, if they're not strict carnivore. So it's giving people options in case, but carnivore is the absolute best option if you want to lower the insulin and you want to get rid of the visceral fat because it's so low and it's so low in inflammation. The next one, so we spoke about foods to not eat, foods to eat. We spoke about snacking, don't snack. So the next one is really good. It's exercise, sprinting. Why is that good to burn visceral fat?
Yeah, we mentioned how long distance running and jogging can contribute to visceral fat. So that's not good. Chronic cardio, not good, especially over time. But short bursts of running and sprinting is incredible for burning visceral fat, healing hormones, and feeling damn good. Here's the reason why. We're designed to sprint. We're not designed to run. And when you go on an all-out sprint, I'll give a protocol here, like 20-second all-out run, sprint, or even cycling. What happens is, pretend like you're running from a threat, a tiger, something's chasing you, and you just all-out effort for 20 seconds. Your body increases nitric oxide, which is a very important molecule that opens up blood vessels, helps with fat loss, helps with mitochondrial function, helps with just a lot of things. And you'll also start to pull fat from your liver, from your kidneys, from your pancreas. It's a great way to start burning body fat. And then when you rest for, let's say, 20-second all-out sprint, resting for 90 seconds, and then 20-second all-out sprint, doing maybe 3 or 4 rounds a couple times per week, you get this sympathetic fight or flight, short-term, stressful response, but I mentioned short-term. Then you get a rest, recovery, and when you go back and forth, you're starting to not regulate, but actually create an intentional short-term stress, and then a relaxation, meaning sympathetic, parasympathetic, sympathetic, parasympathetic, great for fat loss. So if you have bad knees, you could cycle. If you don't have a bike, you could even do swimming all-out effort too for 20 seconds. But the point is not to run for a very long time, but to sprint in short spurts, which should be good news because you don't have to spend an hour running. You could do this protocol in 5 or 10 minutes and do it 3 times a week and get even better results.
So it's 20 seconds on. How much time off? And is it for 5 minutes?
I would do 20 seconds on, all-out effort, 90-second rest. So that's a minute and a half. And then that's 1 round. I would do 3 rounds total. And that should be just a few minutes to complete.
And how many times a week?
3 times a week maximum is all that's needed.
And that's going to burn belly fat?
That's going to burn belly fat. That's it. You don't spend a lot of time at the gym. You save money. You can do it anywhere and you burn fat. All good things.
Okay, so along with sprinting and eating some meat, high CGA coffee. What is CGA?
I have that here right now. Rena, I'm drinking it because it's morning time for me in Miami. Yes. CGA is chlorogenic acid. Chlorogenic acid is an antioxidant. It's a polyphenol that's found in some coffee beans. And what's interesting about we're going to call it CGA for short, but we're talking about chlorogenic acid. CGA has been studied, and it showed that individuals who consume CGA through coffee, high CGA coffee, lose more weight, lose more body fat. There's a Norwegian study that I put in Metabolic Freedom showing that women who are, two groups, women that were overweight and obese and women, they were both overweight and obese, but one group had high CGA coffee. The other group had low CGA coffee. The group that had the high CGA coffee started to lose more weight week after week. CGA helps to balance your blood sugar levels. It helps support your liver, which we've been talking about a lot today. And it helps also to balance out your lipid profile, which is your cholesterol panel with higher HDL, lower triglycerides. It does a similar thing to what statins do without all the side effects of a statin. So we want to make sure it's high CGA coffee. Now, how do you find that? Well, organic coffee is key, and coffee that is grown at higher altitudes, which the companies would list at, have more CGA because higher altitudes are more of a stressful environment. And the more stress the beans are associated with in their environment, the more these polyphenols, the CGA that it produces. So you want to make sure that it's also a medium roast, not a dark roast. Once the beans are roasted beyond medium, it loses about 75% of these CGAs, these fat blasting CGAs. So organic, medium roasted, if it's high altitude grown, even better. Drink that if you drink coffee, and you'll start to burn fat. You'll start to optimize your cholesterol panel as well. And, that's good news. I love coffee. So great news for the coffee drinkers out there.
Who doesn't love coffee? It'll be interesting to see who loves coffee, who doesn't love coffee. I tried a no coffee challenge. It was really hard. I think I survived 2 or 3 days. I was like, I have to have coffee. I do like coffee. I'm not addicted to it. I just do better with it. I don't have any side effects from not having it. So I like coffee. Okay. We mentioned no alcohol as a next point. So I don't think it's reasonable for nobody to have no alcohol ever in their life. So can we discuss what they can have, like on their birthday or once a year? What might be okay?
Yeah, so I'll discuss a little bit more about what would be a better option, and then what can you do before and after to metabolize it quicker as well. So the better options for alcohol, well, the worst is going to be the beer and wine. I would avoid that. And if you're going to have the alcohol on that special occasion, the clear alcohols, the whiskey, the vodka, the tequila. And here's what I always get, Rena. Oh, this guy doesn't know about alcohol because whiskey is not clear, idiot. That's what I get all the time. Well, it is clear when it's put into the barrel, and then when it's processed and put into a bottle, then it turns clear. It's clear before it actually goes into the barrel is what I'm trying to say. So it is clear technically, but let's get into what can you do before and after. Okay. Interesting is that if you take, drink a lot of water before you have alcohol. That's going to help. But if you take a binder like activated charcoal, there's some different binders out there, bentonite clay, different products and supplements, about 30 minutes before, that could help kind of bind some of the toxins in the alcohol. You could also take glutathione as a supplement before as well to help with the processing of that alcohol. I also saw some studies. I know this is not carnivore, but it's a safer sort of vegetable, asparagus. If you ate asparagus with the alcohol, you could process it more efficiently as well. If you're not doing carnivore and you want to add some asparagus, that might be a good option. And then just drink a lot of water throughout the night as well to process it. So those are a few things you can do. If you have alcohol, make sure it's the clear, and you don't want to mix it. You don't want to have the vodka with the cranberry juice or the orange juice. Just have it straight up on the rocks, and that will be the best option if you choose to have alcohol.
So a question that I get a lot in the carnivore group, if you have alcohol, how quickly do you then burn it off and start burning fat again to get into burning ketones?
It's different for everyone. And that's a good question because it is true. If you have alcohol, you're not burning fat. You're not producing ketones. You're prioritizing getting rid of the alcohol. That takes precedence because it's a toxin. The body wants to get rid of it. So how long does it take for you to go back into fat burning mode, back into producing ketones? It depends on how healthy your liver is. It depends on if you're doing the things we're talking about here, some of the little tips and tricks before and after, and if you're having the right alcohol versus the worst. And it depends on how metabolically healthy you are. So I've seen some people get into fat burning mode, producing ketones within 16, 18 hours of having alcohol. And I've seen some people, it takes 3 to 4 days. So it's very different. And you would only know by testing your glucose and ketones after you have it to see how fast you shift back into fat burning mode.
Okay, but preferentially don't have alcohol that often so that you can be burning your ketones. Okay, next one, walking. So I do 10,000 steps a day. It's a new thing I'm doing. It's fantastic. It's very relaxing. It's just movement. Why is walking better than doing, like, for example, a pump class or what's it called? The jogging. What's it called? The
Aerobics class. Got it.
Yes, aerobics or F45. Why is just walking and sprinting better than those classes?
Do they have F45 in Dubai?
No, like I don't want to do that because my problem is that I get too hungry, then I overeat. So, and I don't know if this is a problem with women or something, but if I do too much of intense exercise, I tend to overeat even on carnivore foods. And not that I need to lose weight, but my weight goes up. So I just like to feel good appetite and work out, so I tend to do weights. I tend to walk 10,000 steps. Haven't done the sprinting yet, but I'm going to incorporate that one.
Okay, I love it. I love it. Well, walking is so beneficial, not just for the fat. We'll talk about the fat loss, but for longevity, brain benefits, to have creative ideas for different projects you're working on, to get answers to questions you have in your mind. There's a lot of cool things that happen when you walk, especially out in nature. But when it comes to fat loss, I believe walking is king, queen, and everything in between. Now, what's the difference between walking and doing a 60-minute aerobics class, F45, CrossFit, whatever it is? Well, if you just do the class, nothing wrong with that, but you might be hungrier, as you mentioned, like you are later in the day. You might eat more because of that, but you're also just working out for an hour, and then the rest of the day you're just sitting on your butt. That's not ideal. But when you walk throughout the day, not just 10,000 steps in one walk, but when you accumulate these little exercise snacks to get 10,000 steps a day, that's very beneficial, especially when you walk after your meals. If you're looking for fat loss, walking after your meals is one of the best things you can do. I know for some people, when you hear that, you're like, there's no way I could walk after every meal. I don't have the time to do that. And I get that. Well, you could prioritize the time, or you could choose the biggest meal of the day, which is typically dinner for most people, and use that as the walk that you go for after the meal. Here's why this helps for fat loss. When we eat a meal, especially when it's not carnivore, but even when it's carnivore, there's going to be possibly a glucose response, for sure, if it's carbohydrates, but there might even be a little bit with the carnivore meal. And what happens is when there's a glucose response, meaning when you eat food, you turn it to sugar, especially carbs, and glucose goes up in the bloodstream, then insulin is produced to clear that glucose because the body has a very tightly controlled system and mechanisms in place to regulate glucose. It wants 1 teaspoon of sugar in the entire bloodstream to be considered an optimal state. What does that mean? That's 80 milligrams per deciliter if you're testing a fasting glucose. That's optimal. When we eat, it might go to 95 milligrams per deciliter or 110, or some people even higher. Then insulin is produced by your pancreas to clear that, shuttle it into your cells to bring that glucose back down to baseline. The more insulin that is produced, as we mentioned earlier, the more you store fat. Okay, when you go for a walk, even as little as 10 minutes after a meal, but ideally 30 minutes, you now activate something called the GLUT4 transporters. So that means the sugar that would have been, the food that would have been converted into sugar is now being used for energy. It's being shuttled into your muscle cells via these GLUT4 transporters. That means less insulin is produced to clear the sugar because you're sucking it in like a sponge, and you go quickly into a more fat burning mode because you're not producing as much insulin. So it regulates that postprandial glucose response, which is your blood sugars after eating. Less insulin is produced and you're back into a fat burning state much faster. So walking is great. It's also great for longevity. There's a study I put in Metabolic Freedom showing that people who got 5,000 to 7,000 steps a day, which is not that much, had a 60 to 65% less chance of dying from all-cause mortality versus people who got less than 3,000 steps a day. So I like that you're doing 10,000 steps a day. I do about 10,000 steps, sometimes 14,000 steps. So what I just bought is a weighted vest now. So when I go for a walk, I want to add extra weighted resistance, so a 60-pound vest. So now I'm adding that into my walk. And you want to accumulate those steps over throughout the day, not in just in one sitting. So the morning, in between your meetings, after your meals, throughout the day. And 10,000 steps is a good approach. So track it. I use a ring to track it, but track it. And if you get that consistently, you're going to burn some fat and feel good.
And it doesn't increase your appetite. That's very important because most people, when they exercise, it does increase their appetite. So heavy weight training is good, walking is good, and HIIT is good. So short bursts and then slow, calm walking, not brisk walking like the 80s. Okay, next one. Meal timing and fasting. People know this. What is the best fasting window to burn fat?
An early eating window is the best window, and that's a shocker for a lot of people. Look, I used to say breakfast is the dumbest meal of the day. Skip it. Our ancestors didn't crawl out of a cave and eat breakfast. And that might be true. However, the research kind of shows, especially for women, that we're designed to eat most of our calories, most of our meals earlier in the day. I'll give one study to reference that I talked about in the book. There was a study done in the United States at the University of Alabama, Birmingham, by Dr. Courtney Peterson. And what she did is she took two groups, test groups, and both groups ate the same food, so they controlled their calories. They were both overweight in the groups, in both groups. But the only difference in each group was that one group ate between 8 a.m. and 2 p.m. So they had breakfast and lunch. They skipped dinner. The other group ate between 2 p.m. and 8 p.m. So they skipped breakfast, had lunch and dinner. And they measured their body fat, they measured their insulin, their blood sugar. They also measured autophagy, which is this cellular cleanup process. They measured it through a protein called the LC3A protein. And they measured their sirtuin genes, which are these genes that help with longevity. So they found that the group who had breakfast and lunch and skipped dinner had 10% more of their sirtuin genes activated after 4 days and 22% more autophagy, more fat loss, less of an insulin spike, just by doing that. Now, I know the study and I know the benefits, but even knowing that, it's hard for me to have breakfast because it just for my schedule, I tend to have lunch and dinner. But I give myself about 5 hours between my final meal of the day, dinner, and sleeping. So as long as you can do that, give yourself at least 5 hours. Maybe for some people 3 if you can't really do 5, but 5 hours is the good buffer there. That to me is the best fasting schedule. But you also want to. And let me give you an example of that, by the way. If you go to bed at 10 p.m., that means you're done eating at 5 p.m. That's a 5-hour window of fasting before bed. But the goal with fasting in terms of fat loss is constant rotation. So if you can't do that early time restricted feeding every day, maybe you do it 3 or 4 days, and the other days you could change it up. I'm a big fan of a 24-hour fast once a week. I'm a big fan of longer fast, like a 100-hour fast, a once a quarter or once a year. The goal is to keep changing things up so you keep the metabolism guessing and adapting. That to me is a great schedule. But fasting is phenomenal for fat loss. It's great for longevity, for energy, for performance. And if you just had your calories earlier in the day, you're going to get most of the benefits.
Absolutely. And it's great that when you do a carnivore or a ketogenic diet, that you're keeping your insulin nice and low. So even if you're not doing this perfect fasting or early time restricted eating, you're still offering your body that lower insulin level by having the fat, the protein. But again, as you said, try to have your last meal 5 hours before bed. That's also going to help. So it doesn't have to be perfect because I see so many people that say, I have dinner at 6 p.m., 7 p.m. So how can I, do fasting? So do the best that you can do. Third to last one, 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar before a meal.
Yeah, apple cider vinegar is fantastic. It's doesn't break a fast. It supports a fast. It doesn't have these anti-nutrients that you find in a lot of food. So you could kind of use it during carnivore if you choose to. I do as well. And what it does, apple cider vinegar contains acetic acid. Acetic acid is a really important short-chain fatty acid, which helps with gut support. It supports the liver, which has been the theme of this conversation. And that liver produces something called bile. Bile is a green substance it's like a detergent that breaks down fat. And when you're doing high-fat carnivore, high-fat keto, or just eating healthy fat, you want to break it down. You want to assimilate those vitamins A, D, E, and K, use it for the metabolism, and you burn fat and produce energy. The liver needs to break it down. So a lot of people can't because they have fatty liver disease, visceral fat. So apple cider vinegar helps to support that liver to break down the fat. It also helps with that postprandial glucose response we were talking about with the walking after a meal. It blunts that, especially if you're diabetic, insulin resistant, more metabolic syndrome. It really helps with that. I've seen a study that I published in Metabolic Freedom that showed 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar diluted with water 30 minutes before a meal blunted that postprandial glucose response by over 30%, which is really, really valuable. So if you add that before the meal, the walk after the meal, that's a 1-2 powerhouse for fat loss. So I would definitely incorporate that. And if you could drink the apple cider vinegar through a straw, that would be beneficial so it doesn't mess up your teeth or corrode your teeth or enamel.
Absolutely. Second to last one is very important, 90 minutes of deep sleep. How do you know if you're having deep sleep?
You could track it with a sleep tracker. I use an Oura ring. There's also a Whoop band, Apple Watch, Fitbit. There's different devices, Garmin watches. You could track your sleep, and deep sleep is important. And I would also say REM and deep. So REM is also, deep sleep is the stage 4 sleep where you activate what's called the glymphatic system. Your brain detoxifies, you burn fat, you restore your body, you detox. REM sleep is also important, which is rapid eye movement sleep, which is more for memory consolidation. There's also a lot of calories being burned during REM sleep. So I would aim to get 90 minutes of deep, 90 minutes of REM each night. If you do that, you'll wake up refreshed with a slimmer waistline, a flat stomach, you'll burn fat. I can tell you that not eating 5 hours before bed will help increase your REM and your deep. And if you eat too close to bed, it will destroy your REM and your deep. Cold bedroom helps with your sleep. I mouth tape at night, which makes me breathe through my nose, which helps with deep and REM. So if you're tracking your deep and REM, I would aim to get 90 minutes of each, and you're going to feel great and burn fat doing that.
Okay. The last one I think is the most important, actually, vitamin G.
Vitamin G is the most important supplement you can take, whether you're doing carnivore, keto, paleo, hopefully not vegan, but if you're doing vegan, vitamin G is anti-inflammatory, helps with fat loss, helps with brain fog. There's in my latest book, Metabolic Freedom, I have several studies. So UC Davis has a study that I put in the book that showed individuals who took vitamin G had a healthier blood pressure levels, healthier blood sugar levels compared to those who didn't take vitamin G. There's also a study, the most comprehensive study that I put in the book from Harvard that was published in JAMA, looking at 49,275 nurses. That's a big study. And it showed that the nurses who took vitamin G had a 9% reduction in dying from all-cause mortality versus nurses who didn't take vitamin G, and a 15% reduction in dying from cardiovascular disease versus the nurses who didn't take vitamin G. Okay, your audience is already going on Amazon. They're looking in the show notes for an affiliate link and a coupon code for vitamin G. And guess what? You're not going to find it because vitamin G is the feeling of gratitude. It is the appreciation of certain things, moments, memories. All of those studies are on gratitude, vitamin G. But notice how I said the feeling of gratitude, not the practice. Gratitude is not a practice. Gratitude is a feeling. So a lot of left brain people who are more analytical have a hard time with this. They treat it like a checklist. I'm sure there's benefits there, but it's the feeling of gratitude. Get your vitamin G. It's free. There's no toxicity limit. It could be taken with any dietary philosophy that you follow, carnivore, keto, whatever it is, and you'll get all those amazing benefits.
I just learned something. So I tend to be a type A personality. So when you said it's not a list of your gratitude, because I wake up every morning and I do my gratitude list. So it's a feeling. It's something that you viscerally, and by that I mean internally, feel that your gratitude, you're happy, you're calm, and you're peaceful. It also lowers the cortisol levels and also lowers the insulin levels and helps you burn fat. So it's a very indirect way, but very important. So that was 10 things to help people burn the visceral fat, burn the belly fat. How quickly could they burn those fat if they do all those 10 things?
Oh, you'll get results within days. You'll notice results within days. I know. You'll start to feel better in days. You'll get better sleep. You'll have more energy. Your waist will start to slim down. And then as you stick with it, it'll compound weeks and then months. You could always test your visceral fat to know how much you have and kind of see it progress. But you'll notice the difference here within a matter of days following these 10 steps.
Okay, final question for you, the egg fast. You recommend doing 14 eggs a day to lose the last 10 pounds. Why?
Yeah, well, we went over the benefits of eggs earlier with the choline, the zeaxanthin, the lutein, the healthy saturated fats, cholesterol. But with the last 10 pounds, a lot of people, they get there and it's like the last mile. It's hard to lose those last 10 pounds. So we need to force an adaptation and a shift. And eggs, as I mentioned, it's protein and fat. So it's a very minimal insulin response. And the reason why I say 14, there's a specific reason why I chose that number is because you're getting enough protein to preserve lean muscle mass during this egg fast that you can do for 10 days, which essentially for 10 days in a row, you're just having 14 eggs a day. That could be 7 eggs for lunch, 7 eggs for dinner or breakfast, however you want to do it, but 14 eggs a day. And you're getting enough protein and fat to preserve lean muscle mass, to feel satiated and full. And it creates such a shift in adaptation slash change that forces your body to adapt, lower inflammation even more, lower insulin more, and you start losing the last 10 pounds that you want to lose. So it works really well. I published some information on that on my podcast, and started seeing some of the comments of people doing it, and the comments are amazing. It works really, really well.
Is that safe to do for 10 days straight, just eggs?
It's safe. Yeah, I've done it. A lot of people have done it. Absolutely safe, especially when you're doing this, towards the end of your protocol here, or the end of you're already metabolically healthy is what I'm saying. If you're a sugar burner who's overweight and obese, and you just decide to go into a 10-day egg fast, might be a little bit more challenging. But you're doing this towards the end of like your weight loss journey here, so you're more metabolically healthy. It's super safe. You're going to feel fine.
Okay. Questions about protein. How much protein should you have to burn fat?
It varies for many reasons. In general, getting about 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per pound of your ideal body weight is a good idea most days. What exactly does that mean? That means you determine what your goal weight is, your target weight. If you're 175 pounds right now, but your target weight, your goal weight is 135 pounds, that you want to get about 1 gram of protein per pound of that. So about 115 to 135 grams of protein with the scenario here. You don't have to get that every day, but most days you want to hit that target, and you want to get it from animal source proteins, which preserves lean muscle mass. But look, that's just a general answer there. As long as you're getting at least 30 grams of protein at each of your meals, you're going to stimulate muscle protein synthesis and preserve lean muscle mass. So that could be the bare minimum, at least 30 grams of protein at each meal, which is not hard to do if you're doing carnivore or keto, especially when it's animal sourced.
Absolutely. And talking about delicious recipes from your book, you've got 50 delicious recipes in your book, Metabolic Freedom. What is the best recipe out there that somebody could think, I'm going to have that for breakfast in the morning?
I like to keep it simple with recipes. What's funny about the recipes, I worked with a food journalist on the recipes because I don't like to cook. That's why I love carnivore, because it's so easy. So when you ask me that question, it'll be a different answer than what you'll see in the book, because that's more like recipes. For me, it's, hey, a piece of steak with butter on top, cooked in butter as well, or beef tallow. That I'm good with that. I could have that for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or eggs with some goat cheese and cooked in butter. I like to keep it simple, and to me, it tastes delicious, and for sure, it's healthy.
So if somebody's having the steak and the butter, how does the body burn fat if they keep eating fat?
The insulin piece, the butter is not going to raise insulin. But if you're eating an excessive amount of fat, which is kind of hard to do, but if you're eating an excessive amount of fat, like a lot of people, they'll put butter in their coffee, they'll put butter on their steaks, they'll, take a whole bunch of MCT oil, and they're eating a lot of products that contain extra fats because they're hitting a certain percentage they need to hit on keto or carnivore. There's no need to do that. As a matter of fact, to your point, Rena, once you're metabolically healthy, producing ketones, you could lower your dietary fat intake and allow your body to burn its own stored fat. So that doesn't mean you have to do that. You mentioned you're a high-fat carnivore, but if you have found that you've done all the things carnivore, keto, and they're still 15 pounds, 20 pounds, that might be the switch for you. Okay, let's lower your fat intake and allow your body to burn more stored fat versus the dietary fat. That could be the thing that you might want to do at that point.
Brilliant. Well, Ben, that was a beautiful conversation about how people can burn fat. If they do those 10 things, people can come to you and say, thank you, Ben, so much, and give you a high five. Where can people find you if they want to see more of you?
Thank you for the well-prepared, amazing interview. I love your work. Big fan of your channel. So, I'm not surprised on how structured and great the interview was, because that's the way you roll. So thank you for that. The book would be the best resource. It's called Metabolic Freedom. It's a New York Times bestseller. We have a free course that we're giving away on the metabolism for those who buy the book over at metabolicfreedombook.com. It's available worldwide. And there's some interviews in that course with Dr. Jason Fung, Megan Ramos, Cynthia Thurlow, and Dr. Daniel Pompa, all for free over at metabolicfreedombook.com. And then my website is my name, benazadi.com.
Perfect. Everything's going to be linked in the show notes, especially your book. It is so important for people to get healthy again. It's not just burning fat, it's hormones, it's lowering inflammation. Ben, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Rena.
Thank you for joining me today on this episode with Ben Azadi. Now, if you're learning from enjoying these free episodes, please feel free to hit the subscribe button. That's an excellent zero-cost way to support what we do here. You can also find me on other social media accounts on Instagram and on Twitter under the name of The Primal Podcast. Now, if you love this episode about belly fat and visceral fat, you should watch an episode I did with Dr. Eric Berg. We discuss visceral fat and the easiest way to fix your belly fat and visceral fat, and Dr. Berg's 61 tips to help you lose weight. Finally, thank you for your interest in root cause healing, and I'll see you next week.